Hey everyone, Howie and Kaylyn here from PureMind. Hope you're having an amazing week. We're back with another weekly Q&A, and we have a lot of great questions. Hopefully you guys have been finding those helpful. Please keep sending in questions. It helps us a lot in preparing these too. So Kaylyn, if we want to dive right in, I'm ready when you are.
All right, the first question asks, what if I notice I'm understanding my patterns really well, but I still keep choosing them?
I love this question, and I personally have struggled a lot with this. So I think
Same.
the first thing is giving yourself some grace in it. Like these changes are subtle changes that lead to bigger changes over time. I think is a healthy way to look at it versus having all this pressure on yourself that you have to make these big dramatic changes overnight in your life. So if you view it more of like this is a process of change, it's not about doing it perfectly. That's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing is really doing the energetic arithmetic with your behaviors.
Mm,
Because, for example, like one behavior with myself was like being on social media too much, right? Like there was a level where it was fun and I felt like it was a distraction and like I think that's fine to a degree, but there's that point where it's like okay, now this is draining or now this is like causing me to avoid living my life. So this was one I really grappled with for like such a long time. And so basically I just had to look at the is this giving me energy or taking away energy? Once I saw that more clearly and at what level it went from giving to taking, it was easier to kind of switch it up. Because I think if we actually understand what's giving us energy versus taking it away, why would we choose consciously to keep doing something that clearly drains energy? We might still choose it because it's familiar and feels safe. But I think the more you can kind of take the morality out of it and just look at it from the energetic, is this giving me energy or taking it away? It can be helpful just choosing something different without so much pressure.
yeah. And I will say too, what you're experiencing is a very common thing. Like Howie said, he's been here, I've been here, and I would be lying if I said I still don't have things that I'm aware of and still keep consciously choosing, right? This is kind of like the pathway to healing. I think the first thing though is it's great that you have this awareness, right? Because you can't shift something that you're not conscious to. So also knowing, like how we said, giving yourself grace because this really is the first step into choosing and relating and kind of behaving in a new way. I will say I have fallen into this trap many times where I thought, self awareness, could kind of like bypass me being uncomfortable or having to choose differently. And I think that we can use awareness as almost like another layer of almost avoidance, just kind of wrapped in spirituality. Because it's like we think if we know more, if we contemplate more, we always talk about this. Is it my sister wound, my father wound? I know what part of me it's from. I know exactly how old I was when the fracture happened. And honestly, none of that even matters. It doesn't matter. It matters, okay, what are you going to do now to live differently? And I think that we use deeper awareness or contemplation as kind of a way to keep us from actually doing the thing that's going to make the difference, which is choosing a new behavior. So I think that it's great that you're noticing. And if right now the most aligned, the best thing you can do is just to keep getting awareness, then that's also great, right? Sometimes it takes our identity and our nervous system some kind of buy-in or collecting enough evidence or pain or pressure around the thing before we choose differently, right? We don't have to bypass our body or force ourselves into something that maybe we're not completely ready to choose. And simultaneously, I think the more aware that you are, it gets to a point where, you kind of get to this point where you have no other choice but to move, right? So if this is where you are right now, that's perfectly fine. And next time you catch yourself, in that awareness of whatever behavior it is, maybe take a minute to pause and say, how do I want to respond to this differently? How do I want to live differently with this? And, giving your body the support it needs to move.
Exactly. And I think that stripping away the pressure, like you said, and if focusing on awareness in the meantime is what you need to do, then fine. Like we're not trying to nail this perfectly. Again, that keeps the pressure out of the system. None of us are going to do it perfectly. I also think if you can get kind of curious about it, and we talk a lot about doing experiments. So rather than like, I have to change this behavior because it's ruining my life or whatever, it's like, well, for a month, what if I chose a different behavior and let's just see how it goes? Maybe I don't like that new behavior more than the one I'm doing, but like, let's just try something different, see what happens. So treating it like I'm going to make a hypothesis, I'm going to choose something else just as an experiment. And if I decide that old behavior is still the one I want to go with, I can always go back to it. But the willingness to try something different, like you're mentioning, Kaylyn, because it does come down to choosing differently at the end
Yeah.
of the day. Like one thing for me, like this summer, it's been a lot of time like spent being on the lake and outside, and here in Minnesota, you're so cooped up that you really want to celebrate it. So I noticed that I was getting a little out of like my healthy routine. Like I was having a little too much beer on the lake,
Yep.
type of deal. And it was like, that's okay. Like I got to have my fun, but I'm noticing that it's starting to take. It doesn't feel like a celebration anymore. So it was like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm just gonna go a month of not drinking anything. And like not as a moral thing, it's just like I want to get back in a routine that feels supportive for me. And so doing that, you start to see things different. Like, oh, like I actually like having drinks on vacation, but I don't like it being a thing that's regular in my life. Right? Maybe that's the balance you discover. For some people, it might be like, I just can't touch it at all, whatever. We're all different in terms of our relationship to those things. But I think that's really what it comes down to is being honest. And then if it is like for a month, I just got to say no to this thing because I don't even want it on the table as an option, then do it for a period that you actually feel like you could stick with. A month for most people is doable with the behavior. It's like, I'm not going to go on TikTok for a month because it just seems to be consuming you too much. Then don't do it for a month and just see what happens. Or whatever duration you believe you could actually follow through on without torturing yourself. For me, a month is one that's like feels like it stretches me a little, but also seems like I could do anything for a month.
One thing I want to pull into that I noticed with myself in the beginning is that it does feel hard to do this, right? So if you're feeling like you're listening to us and you feel discouraged, like I'm trying and I still keep going back to this behavior, relationship, whatever it is, also knowing that like that is completely normal, right? Our nervous system doesn't really care about what's good for us. It cares about what's familiar and what's been known. So you have to realize I'm 34 years old. I've spent 34 years practicing and participating as this version of myself. So if I want to essentially change a part of me or a response or a behavior, a belief, it's also going to take some practice, right? And I think that we get to this point where it becomes really unbalanced. Yes, I think there's a time to contemplate, to understand yourself, to dig deeper. Those parts have dramatically changed my life, and I'm so thankful for that. And understanding yourself isn't automatically correlated or transfers into becoming that new version of yourself, right? And that's why these experiments are so important. That's why actually taking action that feels uncomfortable or reorienting to your system is powerful, right? Because thought alone isn't going to do it. So also knowing that like the awareness isn't the day that the shift completely integrates. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes repetition. So start with awareness and then start looking at how would I choose differently? How would I move differently? I just think that's important. Um, should we go to the next one?
Yeah, next one's perfect.
All right. Why does becoming healthier sometimes make my relationships feel harder?
So I'm not exactly sure the correlation, but I would assign it to just like making change in general in your life can make relationships harder because sometimes people have a certain idea of who you are that they're used to, and you start becoming someone different, and even if that's more aligned with the version of you that you want to become, it's almost like the other person's dealing with a new person. Like maybe you have a friend, for example, that you love going drinking with, going back to that example, and you're like, I don't feel like alcohol is serving me in my life right now, and so I'm going to stop doing that behavior. Well, if your whole relationship's based on doing that, then obviously the dynamics are going to shift quite a bit. and you either grow together in the dynamic, or maybe that relationship has just kind of run its course if that behavior is no longer serving you. So I think ultimately it comes down to you have to make the decisions that are best for you and that are aligned, and the right people will grow with you and will love that you're doing that for yourself. And the people that feel like they need that version of you in order to have that relationship might fall away. So there is that level of like, there can be a little bit of grief in becoming a better version of yourself because sometimes you have to burn a bridge with some of those relationships.
Yeah, and I will say I 100% agree with everything that you said. Because when we're in relationship, right, we almost create like this ecosystem with each other. And if, my partner, let's say, for example, is used to me showing up and, over giving, and maybe when you get in an argument, you're the one who shrinks, or you're the one who always forgives, right? Insert whatever behavior. The minute you start to honor alignment within yourself, or maybe set boundaries for the first time, you're shifting the whole dynamic of the relationship. And that's why they feel harder. I think so many, like, just maybe qualities or ways or patterns, even, right, that you've been operating, or your partner or your family, whatever it is, has been showing up. Really, like, the volume gets turned up because now you have deeper discernment about what's really nourishing for your system. So I think in the beginning, it does feel a little bit harder because, one, you're completely reorganizing. Whoever you're in relationship with has to reorganize around this new version of self. And, this isn't to say also that every relationship has to change or fall away when you desire to evolve. But I do think it takes a deeper level of honesty and intimacy to still ask, am I still choosing this? Is this still in alignment? And from my own personal life, I'll tell you, I've had some relationships that rise to meet me with where I'm at and who I'm becoming, and that feels really nourishing and great. And also, I've had friendships and family members and things that naturally fell away, and it doesn't have to be dramatic, right? It doesn't have to be this big falling out, but it's a quiet way that you really set a boundary to protect your peace. But I think that what you're experiencing is very common, right? Especially when you start putting yourself first and maybe stop, like the people pleasing or over accommodating or over giving, like some of those tendencies. A lot of people aren't interested in meeting the healed version of you because they benefit too much of the unhealed version of you. And it's still being able to hold that awareness and choose yourself.
Yeah, that really hit deeply because you're right. Sometimes when we're the people pleasing, over accommodating version of ourselves, it does serve the other person, like literally like you're the butler at home or whatever. But I think people that really love you, even if there's kind of that awkward phase where you're becoming someone different, I think there's one thing to be like aware of too in the process of change is it doesn't make you better than anyone else because you're
Yeah.
better for yourself. Sometimes when it's like I'm making all these changes and you're over there and you haven't changed anything, it can become a tit for tat thing and kind of a holier than thou
Yeah.
type of deal. So I think it's important to keep yourself grounded and humble in it, to still keep your heart open to people. You don't have to eradicate everyone from your life that isn't in alignment with your high vibe. It's the true high vibe is I'm doing this for me. I can have discernment, I can set boundaries, I can do all these things. Like I don't need to be a doormat for people, but I also don't need to act like all my changes make me better than someone else. And I don't think I've ever really been like that, but it's maybe come across that way sometimes. So that's just one thing that I've learned in this journey too.
And I really love that you brought this up because I think that it's so easy to get a spiritual ego, or because you're healing you feel like you're better than everyone, and I am so guilty of that. I definitely participated that in a phase of my life. And something that really helped me was really coming back to nature and looking at how nature craves diversity. And I don't need my family members or my, significant other or my friends to think and believe and move in the same way that I do in order to be good enough or worthy to be in my life, right? So I think that this pathway isn't about, becoming better than the people around you, but it's becoming the best you for yourself, right? and creating a life that's so deeply in alignment and fulfilling for you. And that also means, keeping the relationships in your life that deeply nourish you. I think also kind of separating people from maybe like what they're doing in their personal lives to who they're being in your life, right? What is the frequency? What is the exchange that I get when I'm with this person? And is that in alignment with what I want to experience? That's been something that really helped me with some of this too. But I love that you brought that up. Do you want to add anything or should we go to the next one?
Well, just something like with family in particular, because your friends you kind of choose, right? Like, but family, you might have these deep ties, but you might have a family member that really, acts in a way that's not in alignment with you, but you want to maintain some level of connection. So sometimes on the healing journey, and it can be appropriate in phases to create distance. I'm not saying that, but it's like, I'm going to kick everyone out that doesn't agree with me, right? Or that isn't as aware as me, or, that still is running old programming or isn't healed. It's like being the version of you that shines the light, that yes, holds boundaries and all of that, decides when enough's enough, but like keeps people included in life, I think is really important. Otherwise, you're going to end up very alone.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go burn your entire life down to protect your peace. I think to protect your peace is like, of course, honor your boundaries, of course, communicate clearly. But this is what actually helps people, not just kicking them out of your life because they're not matching your vibe. So that can save you a lot of time. So you don't have to burn everything down and then rebuild it, right? Like that can be a big process.
100%. And last little piece of medicine I want to weave in is that if your boundaries are in place to avoid you from getting triggered, then they're not truly a boundary and you still have a lot more work to do. So think about that too when you're, evolving and you're growing and setting these boundaries in place. Like, are they there to really honor myself or are they there to keep me from being triggered? I think that's a
That
very,
that's a really good point. I never really thought about it that way, but you're right. Most boundaries come from associating the body being triggered with something wrong happening.
yeah,
Like you're going to be triggered. Like I don't know anyone that's deleted triggers from their body. So yeah, like you don't have to go looking for triggers either. But like, okay, my family tends to trigger me more because they know me the best. They can push those buttons.
yeah.
Maybe I don't subject myself to that all the time, but I'm not afraid of being triggered either. It's good practice.
Yep, I love it. Let's go to the next one. What if the version of me I work so hard to become isn't actually who I want to be anymore? This is a great question.
I think it's good to just evaluate like, are the things I wanted before still the same things? Because it's true that as we grow and heal and evolve, our desires can change. For example, I've always been an entrepreneur, but when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, it was more about making money. It was more of like an identity of being an entrepreneur, which at the time, whatever, like that's fine. Now it's like I don't really care so much about that. It's like, of course, I want to
Yeah.
make a living and whatever. I'm not saying that. But it's really more about service. It's not about like me being getting notoriety for it. So my desire for why I was doing it did shift. And I think we kind of go deeper into our virtues and our values, like maintaining integrity, doing things morally, right for whatever that means to each one of us, versus like, how's the world going to see us? So it can definitely shift, but sometimes it can still be the same thing. It's just the underlying foundation shifts a little bit.
Yeah, and I will say, like, welcome to evolution. I think that we are constantly evolving, especially on an identity level. Even if I look at a year ago, 2 years ago, right, 10 years ago, I am nowhere close to the same version of self that I once was. So if you're at this point where, you're noticing that you don't really feel an alignment or you don't really feel like you want to be the version of yourself that you work so hard to become, also giving yourself permission to honor that part of yourself, right? Because I think too we create these identities throughout our healing journey, right? For me, for example, I became the very spiritual person, right? Then it's like we become the successful person. And then it's like we're calm, whatever it is. And then I think you get to this point, at least this is really what I'm experiencing right now, where it's not about so much of who I want to become, but who am I when I stop performing, when I stop reaching. You know what I mean? There's this more honest, true expression and essence that's underneath all of that. So if you're noticing right now that this identity that you worked so hard to create now feels like a prison, I think it's starting to look at your life and like, where are all the ways that I'm performing, proving, striving, trying to be something other than truth. And I think the more that you come back to what is true for me, what is aligned for me, what feels good to me, my desires, my curiosities, you're always going to be the identity that you're most aligned or supposed to be in this season, right? So if you feel like you don't want to be this version anymore, then guess what? Nobody's keeping you prisoner, right? You have the ability to change, to evolve, to transform as many times as you want. And it sounds like you're at this beautiful edge of becoming.
And it kind of ties back to what you were saying before about, are you doing it to avoid triggers? I think it's a similar thing when the honeymoon phase of healing wears off, or the honeymoon phase of the person you're becoming wears off, and it feels like you're sober off of it. That doesn't mean anything's going wrong. That's why aligning with your values is so important. For example, if it's like my one of my values is to contribute my gifts to other people, whether it's fun or not, whether it feels super expansive or feels boring. It's like it doesn't really matter how it feels
Yeah.
because it's my value to help. So I think sometimes it's like my hair's not on fire with excitement for this thing anymore. Like now I want to go to the next thing. Sometimes that can be true, but a lot of the times it's like, am I still caring for my family, caring for my community, caring for myself? Who cares how I feel if I'm doing those things, right? In whatever way I can share my gifts, because we all have unique ways for helping, right? We all have unique ways for showing up for ourselves. And so I was actually journaling about this topic the other day, and it's kind of like the idea if you're tending to your garden and you're on this plot of land and you're like, this plot of land will definitely give me a great harvest. Like this is a perfect area. And you're all excited about the harvest that's going to happen. Then you actually start planting seeds and watering and doing all the work to nurture the land. And after a month, it's like nothing's showing up. It seems pretty boring. It's like the harvest isn't here. And so it's like, oh, but that hill over there, that hill has better land.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move and I'm gonna start over there. Now you're all excited about the possibility of the harvest on the new plot of land. But then you run into the same thing a month into it. Whereas like if you just hung in there with what you're doing and let if it's feeling kind of boring or mundane or not exciting, be a part of the process of the field growing, you often find that it just goes in cycles, right?
Yeah.
So like you don't have to correlate everything to the way it feels. Because am I taking care of the land? Whether it feels exciting or boring. If you can answer yes to that, just keep going. And if you really feel like you need to shake it up, start slowly introducing other things into your life. And I'm so guilty of this in my journey. When I was in my early 20s, I was jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing because it felt exciting. And I
Yeah.
thought I was just supposed to follow my excitement versus nurturing my values, which is a different thing. That doesn't always feel exciting.
So I want to pull this in because it's coming up as I'm hearing your words. And I think, tying into this, what if the version of me I work so hard to become isn't actually who I want to be anymore? I think too, it's important to think about most of our identities and most of the healing comes from this almost like anti energy. Like we're trying to get away from something, we're trying to get rid of something, we're trying to experience the other of something, right? But that still isn't like from a creation point of truth or desire or of just this full of I'm choosing this, I want to do this, I'm doing this for the hell of this, right? And I think once you've healed enough and you've been on this journey, you start to realize I'm so sick of looking at like what's next or what do I need to fix or who do I want to become, and you start looking at this moment, this day, this presence. How do I want to live right here right now? And it's such a different energy than trying to get away from something or just move to the next thing, right? Just doing something from desire, doing something from truth, doing something from value, right? Because it's an expression of who you are, not because I'm trying to become more healed or more polished or more spiritual or more, you know what I mean? So I think that this place that you're at is such a beautiful point that you're almost kind of letting go of that healer identity or this place where you feel like you need to be fixed, and now you're at this beautiful place where it's like now I guess get to fully live. I get to experience aliveness, right? Like it's so different.
Yeah, you're like detoxing off the healer's dopamine, right?
Yeah.
Well, now I'm healed, I guess, because like now I don't feel like there's anything to heal.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now you can live. But like living,
Exactly.
I think there's an idea with healing. It's like once I'm healed, I'm just going to feel like so excited about everything all the time. It's like no,
No.
you just get to be in contact with reality, and that's okay. And if it feels boring, if it feels mundane, look at your values. Am I nurturing them? Like you said, Kaylin, like am I doing things from the present moment without an agenda? It's great to have goals and it's great to have those things which are aligned with your values, but moment to moment, it's like, what am I doing? Like, how am I taking care of this garden? Oftentimes, when we feel stuck, there is a part of the garden, like let's say it's creativity that's not being expressed. Well, maybe look over there, right? Start doing things to watering that part of the garden. So sometimes these things focus our attention as well. But if you're like, my day is full with nurturing my values, you're still going to have ups and downs emotionally and with energy, but it won't matter as much. It'll still feel full. It won't always feel good, but it'll feel full.
Yeah, I love it. Let's go to this next one. Why does having more choice sometimes feel scarier than being stuck?
Because you have more responsibility. You know, when circumstances are tough and our choices are really stripped down, it's kind of like, in a way, life's making your choice for you. It's like you don't have a lot to work with. So as you're given more options on the menu, it's like going to Cheesecake Factory. It's like, what the hell am I going to order here? There's 9,000 things on the menu. You can almost have like decision fatigue versus like there's one thing on the menu. That's what you're getting. It's a little easier from that perspective. So it's okay. Again, I think it's just kind of getting used to it and getting more clear on like what's actually nurturing to me. What are the things I'm partaking in that maybe have run their course, that I'm not learning a whole lot from, that are draining my energy. And I think this is what helps make the choices that might seem really gigantic more focused as well. What feels life giving, right? I'm going to start choosing those things primarily. And that doesn't mean they're always going to make me feel super expansive and blissed out of my mind. You know, I might choose that and feel like crap, but I can still know that that choice in general is life giving to me. So if you start thinking of it that way, like out of all the options that are out there, which ones feel the most life giving or most energy giving to me, like that helps narrow it down so that you don't have such a wide selection of choice.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I think too, we don't talk about this that expansion can feel just as activating to a nervous system as a difficulty or an obstacle in your life. And I think the responsibility piece is 100% what it is, because if I have choice, then I'm actually responsible for what I'm creating or what I'm experiencing, right? So it's like no longer being the victim or no longer getting to blame, my reality on my circumstance. Now I actually have agency to choose and to move. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying, right? Because for the first time, you have to go from being in survival to being in sovereign. And that means having the freedom and the responsibility for all of it, right? The things you perceive good, the things that you perceive bad. So I think that what you're feeling, like why it feels scary, is like those growing pains of expansion. Expansion does feel scary. It's unfamiliar, it's unpracticed to our bodies, to our nervous system. And even like our bodies will constantly choose a familiar hell. And we've heard this time and time again, but it's so true, right? It's going to choose what it knows, even if it's not what it wants. So that feeling of being stuck, even though it's painful as hell, I know I can still survive it. But going into this new choice and this new reality, I don't know if I can survive it. So I'd rather stay stuck, right? So it's like you're kind of feeling that tug and pull of a nervous system that's trying to reorient or organize around safety while you're moving into uncertainty, right? So, first and foremost, it's 1000% normal what you're experiencing. And like Howie was sharing, it's like choosing those things like, what can I do that's going to nourish my system? What can I do that's going to take that 1% aligned action into the type of experience that I want to really feel in my body and in my life, right? So, if you're noticing that you feel a little scared and that, expansion feels a little harder than being stuck, like that's perfectly okay. And how can you give yourself enough support and resource to move, even if it's just a little bit?
And I want to highlight that 1% part again that you just said, because oftentimes when we're trying to make changes, we try to go from zero to hero, but
Yep.
that overrides our system. It's like, imagine your body has been stuck at home because it's so freaked out about even going outside, and then you go take it to Mall of America, right, where the energy is really intense. It's like, you think your body's going to trust you if that's the extreme that you're going to? No, it's going to break the trust. It's like, yeah, every time you take me to do something, you override me.
Yep.
And then I'm just like a total hot mess. Versus like, what's a 1% thing I could do? Can I walk out the door and walk right back in? Can I open the window and look outside? Right? Show your body that it's safe to follow your lead. Because if it doesn't trust that, of course it's going to feel safer inside. Because it's like, this is where, like you mentioned, this is familiar. So bit by bit, reestablishing that trust. If I follow the lead of conscious awareness, I'm not going to be betrayed. I'm not going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of a visual I once saw about this, and I think it's so important to pull in. Let's say you had to climb 100-foot ladder, and you could climb, there's two of them side by side. One of them has steps, let's say every 5 inches apart, and the other has them every 5 feet. What ladder is essentially going to be easier for you to climb, right? The one with the smaller steps. And that's why, like, the 1% action, it seems so mundane or so like little or simple that it wouldn't compound to change. But those compounded actions create momentum up the ladder, right? Or we have the one where they're 5 feet apart and it's like, I have to take this huge leap, this huge risk, and essentially I'm going to fall, right? So weaving in these small experiments, actions, changes, they compound into lasting transformation. So it's better to give your nervous system some form of like buy-in and safety and evidence that it's safe. And then it's like, oh, okay, I did that. Now I can take another step. Now I can take another step. Do you know what I mean? So this part is so important. And maybe that's the homework for everyone listening this week. It's like finding an area of your life that you feel like you've been avoiding, postponing, not wanting to look at, and looking at like, what's that 1% way that I could really lean into this a little bit deeper.
The momentum part's so huge. It's like the snowball rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
It's like using the example of, and I know we've mentioned this in a different Q&A or transmission, but like the idea, if you wanted to start going to the gym again and you hadn't been in a long time, maybe the baby steps, like, I'm just going to drive to the gym. I don't even have to go in. I'm just going to drive. And if that's all I do, I can come right back home. But that's the agreement. That's the baby step. But you might drive to the gym and be like, hey, screw it. I'm already here. I might as well get my steps in on the treadmill. So you go inside, you're like, that seems easy enough. And you do that and you're like, wow, now I'm actually feeling pretty good. Maybe I'll do a little weightlifting as well. So just by going, moving in a way that your body's like, yeah, I could do that, lead can create a momentum. And sometimes it's like, I really did just have the energy to just drive there and drive right home, but I'm still honoring the agreement. I'm still leaving the house. I'm still moving in that direction. So I know we all want the big immediate change, but it can happen, but it's not very probable. And usually when people make big, like, life-changing things, it's because they're just so sick and tired of living that way that they finally hit a point where, like, enough's enough. So
Yeah.
it might seem like it was overnight, but it was years and years of buildup of wanting it to change, and then finally it shifted.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, the goal isn't to be this person who's like endlessly working on themselves. And I 100% have been that person who I was the next thing, the next modality. You know what I mean? I thought I had to constantly be working on myself to be healed or to be evolving. And I think now I'm at this really cool point where it's like, I don't feel like I have to always be fixing or working myself, but really at this point where I'm returning to my life and returning to my aliveness. And I don't need to contemplate more, I need to participate more, right? And how do I actually meet the life that's asking me to be lived right now, right? And I think that when we can start bringing more of our awareness and more of our attention and more of our attunement into the present, it's almost like a lot of this stuff heals on its own, right? It has like this inverse reaction by not being so like hyper focused on the thing. It magically begins to kind of heal and reorganize and restabilize all on its own simply through you participating in your life.
Yeah, it's baked into the process. Like, that's the part we think we have to stay at home and hide and heal before we can participate.
Yes.
But the healing's already baked into the participation. You go to the gym, someone's a jerk to you and triggers the crap out of you, and now you have this opportunity to, like, communicate clearly, to stay with yourself, to set a boundary, whatever, right? So it's like it's all included in real time. You don't have to think about it before. And
Yep.
yeah, in the beginning, when we're strengthening our awareness, we might have to spend more time in terms of introspection, but that's baked into your calendar as well. It's like, okay, maybe I have to spend a little more time on the spirituality, on the awareness, looking within. Great, but you don't have to spend all day doing that. You did it in the morning, now go live your life. Go put it into practice. Go see how you do, right? Because life, and I know you've been saying this a lot, and I completely agree, it's like life gives feedback based on your participation. It's not like they're like just handing out answers to things. It's like, what's it even answering if you're not
Yes.
participating?
What
There's no
1000%.
question. There's no
Yeah.
question that creates an answer. It's like your participation is the question
Yep.
that gets an answer, and then you get to say, okay, based on that answer, what's my next question? Right? And so it's an iterative thing, and that's what alignment is, and that's really what healing is. Like, you have to participate to get feedback, and then you take the feedback, you reassess, and you make your next hypothesis. And that's fun because it's not a personal thing. It's like, oh, I'm just here learning and growing and experimenting.
Yeah, I love it. And I think too, this is such a good place to wrap it up because I think that you can take this and ask yourself, you know, if just for this moment or just for this day, whenever you're listening to this, right? If I stop trying to heal or work on myself, then how would I just live differently? How what's that 1% way that I could live differently today to start reorganizing my nervous system, my identity, my spirit around something different? That is more powerful than contemplating, than analyzing, than trying to understand more. Sometimes we don't need to do that. We just need to move in our life. We just need to meet our life exactly as we are, however healed, not healed, perfect, you know, you think you are in this moment. How do you just show up and meet life? And that will give you feedback on how to participate and live more fully.
And I think one thing that people are probably wondering was like, well, at what point am I like bringing awareness to this? And I think a helpful way of doing this is to not try and be perfect, to go engage in your life. Like, let's say, for instance, you're engaging in your life and you just get absolutely triggered and you're super overwhelmed and you say something that's totally not in your highest way of saying it, and you lived it. And then after, you can have a period of your day where you reflect on the day, and it's like, this part I really got lost in the sauce. Like, now you actually have a real thing to work with. You're not just in the world of concepts. It's like, this is what happened, this is what happened in my body, this is how I reacted to it. That was not in my highest, I'm aware of that. how can I learn and grow from this situation? That's going to be way more helpful for you than trying to predict all of this stuff or be prepared for all of it so that you're never triggered and you respond perfectly. It's like learn by getting in the game, right?
Yeah.
And I spent so much time, and this is why I'm passionate about it, just being on the sidelines, studying the playbook. At
Yeah.
what point are you going to say, I'm going to have to get on the field and I might get tackled really hard? But you know what? By experiencing that way, I guarantee you I'm going to find out a way to maneuver better next time because that
Yeah.
hurt. So I think it's interesting, and it becomes way more fun because you're not waiting on the sidelines and then your life is just passing you by. You get to learn real time in the game. And then when I think of the ketamine work or even like meditation, it's kind of like you're studying film, right? It's
Yeah. That,
now I get to watch it, I get to play it back, I get to see what happened from a different perspective. But why am I studying that? So I can be more skilled in the game. So we don't want to lose the game part, right? Like we're never going to be at a point where you're just fully optimized. You're going to optimize yourself by actually participating more.
I love it. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. We really appreciate you being here and submitting your questions. So please continue to do that so we can show up and serve you in the best way. If you haven't made your way yet into our private community, every Thursday night we host subconscious reprogramming events, which our clients have been absolutely loving, not to toot my own horn, but they absolutely love them. And if you're looking for a way to really do this in real time, to really kind of show the body new evidence, experiences of something different, we would absolutely love to have you join us. And we host them, like I said, every Thursday night. So post your comment below and we'll make sure to send you the link.
For sure. And just one thing about the subconscious reprogramming, this is a really good low measure way for you to start reestablishing trust with your body by showing your body, hey, we can do something that doesn't require a lot of energy to show up. It's not going to override your system, and your body's going to come out feeling a lot more supported. So, like we're talking about, taking these baby steps towards creating momentum, this is a way that we're helping you guys do this. So, just by showing up is a huge step in towards repairing that trust between you and your body and your nervous system. So, we'd love to see you there. And, like Kaylyn mentioned, just shoot us a DM if you'd like the link for that.
Yes. Until next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.